Hello, my name is Nick Deborah. I'm an independent educator in the fields of data visualization and dashboard design. And in this video, I want to talk about essentially, should we be using AI now to create charts, right? There's been some pretty impressive progress in large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude recently. And so, I want to basically ask well, okay, if these models are so powerful now, and of course there's so much hype, so much attention around them, why are so many charts still being created with data visualization software products like Excel or Tableau or Power BI or Click or the others, right? And basically, should we be switching over to creating charts using large language models instead? And so I'm going to tackle this question in two parts. The first is going to be kind of a little demo of me creating a chart in AI that I have never created before in AI. It's a chart that I've created before in Excel. And so you're going to see me do it for the first time. And then the second part, maybe some, takeaways about what the perhaps strengths and weaknesses of AI are when it comes to making charts, because I've been playing around with this a fair amount recently, and so I can just share my observations with you. And so the first part, like I said, is kind of a demo of me trying to create a chart where I want to visualize this data. Just to briefly introduce it, this is basically salary data for 10 companies. It's just synthesized data. It's not real data. And so I want to show this in what I call a distribution heat map. This is one of the chart types that I cover in my practical charts, or rather my second book, More Practical Charts. And this is, there are a couple of reasons why I chose this chart type. One of them is that, it's definitely a chart that requires multiple steps. And as we'll see, in those cases, this is, a situation where AI is probably going to be a better choice than something like Excel or Tableau. Like if you're creating something that you can create in just a couple of steps in those products, probably better off using those. But this is definitely a more complicated chart. To be honest, it's kind of a pain in the ass to create it in Excel. And so I want to see if I can basically create this more quickly and easily in using an AI. So I'm now going to switch over to, actually I'm going to use Gemini for this. And the reason why I'm using this particular large language model is that I've been playing around with it. It's very new. It's just the last, week or so, I think that's been out, Gemini 2.5. And it does seem to be the most reliable, actually, when it comes to creating charts. But this changes all the time, of course. Before that, I was using Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which was probably the best one. But it really depends. And so I'm actually going to also start a timer. And the reason I'm going to do this is so that you can basically see kind of real-time elapse, because there are going to be lots of times where when I edit this video, I'm going to fast forward because it's just going to be me typing or thinking or the AI thinking. And so I'm just going to cut those out later on. But you can see essentially how long this is going to take me in real time. All right, so I'll go ahead and start the timer now. So I want to upload my data. So there's my salary data. All right, so I have my first prompt here. I'll read it out. You are a world-class data visualization designer. Oddly enough, you often get better results if you tell the LLM that it's an expert in whatever it is that you're trying to do. Please create a tabular heat map of the attached employee salary data, because I've attached a CSV with the data here. From 10 companies, each column should represent one company. Each row should represent a salary bin or range. The entire salary range for all employees should be divided into 8 equal-sized bins. Each cell in the tabular heat map should be colored to represent the percentage of employees for that company who are in that salary range. The colors should be sequential, ranging from dark blue for the highest value to light blue for the lowest value, and white for a value of 0. Do not show the values in each cell, only the shade of blue that represents that value. Ask me for clarification of any of the above. I do want to note that I was using my skills as a data visualization designer to come up with this description. So already, it is, I think, a bit relying on this skill. But let's see what it comes up with. All right. So I'm just going to open this up in a new tab just so I can get a better look at it. That's not bad, actually. So there are a couple of fixes that I want to make though. The bin ranges are kind of clunky. Whenever I'm doing intervals, I like to have kind of round numbers. So let's see if we can get it to do that. Just some cosmetic things. I can probably get rid of these tick marks as well. The legend can probably be a little bit smaller, but pretty decent. Pretty decent, I would say. Not quite ready for publication. Like I said, I would want to make some other changes, but let's make those changes. I forgot to read off my prompt here. Please use more round numbers for the interval ranges, i.e. numbers that are multiples of 10,000. Remove the tick marks from both axes. Sort the companies from highest, median, and salary to lowest. Remove the gray borders from the table. Insert some white space between the columns. Make the legend 80% shorter, but keep it in the upper right. And so let's see what it's coming up with here. Got some bugs that it's fixing. Uh-oh. So yeah, unfortunately, this does happen with with all the models that I've used. Sometimes it basically just taps out. It's created an error or encountered an error that it couldn't fix on its own. You can see if I go back up here, it did encounter some errors, but it said that it was trying to fix it. So let's see if we can get it to fix the error. Please try again while avoiding the you encountered. Aha, okay, it somehow lost the file that I gave it, the CSV that had the salary data in it. So it's asking me to re-upload the file. He'll be happy to try it again. Okay, well, let's re-upload the file. It was this one. Here is the file again. Please try again. Okay, so it found the file again. Here, let's just open this up so you can see it better. There we go. So yeah, so it did the intervals of 10,000. That's nice. It seems to have sorted by median salary from lowest to highest. I'm not sure if that's what I asked it to do or not. I'm gonna have to go back and check my prompt. I thought I wanted to go from highest to lowest. But yeah, it also removed the borders. It did make the legend smaller, but I asked it to keep it in the upper right. And so I would have to potentially change that. But yeah, I mean, this is getting pretty close. I think I'll want to maybe just kind of make it a little bit smaller, right? So that the labels are not quite so far apart. So let me make those changes. All right, so I'm basically just doing some finessing, some fine tuning. Please make the x-axis, y-axis, and legend labels larger so that there's not quite as much sort of space between those labels. Move the legend so the top of the legend is aligned with the top of the chart. So it didn't quite get that right. I asked for the legend to be in the upper right, but it stuck it in the kind of middle right. So I'm going to try and get it to fix that. Remove the gaps between the rows because I only asked for gaps between the columns, right? So remove gaps between the rows, increase the gap between the columns. Hopefully it'll do that. Sort the companies from highest median salary to lowest. Locate the y-axis label above the bin range values. I basically want it to put the y-axis value up here, which is something I like to do in my charts, and it's easier to read than a vertical label here. Insert some space in between the chart title and top of the heat map. I find that the chart title is too close to the heat maps here, so I'm going to try and get it to space that out a bit. And I'm just going to try and change the font to Roboto. I know that's Google font, so hopefully it's going to be able to find it. And all fonts, for all fonts in the chart, and make them dark gray instead of black. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so two issues here. First, it didn't find the Roboto font, which is strange. I thought that was a Google font, so I thought it would be able to use it. But anyways, not that big a deal, I guess. We could try and find a font that it knows how to use. But the bigger issue is that it lost the CSV again. And so let's try and give it the CSV again. Upload the file, customer return synthetic salary data. Here is the CSV file again. Please try again. Oh, we got a spinning thing here, hopefully. All right, so I just restarted the chat. Hopefully it won't hang here. Here is the file. And please try again. File, synthetic salary. I think we might have gotten stuck, which is one of the considerations, which I'm going to talk about in a moment here. This does happen with some frequency, especially with the frontier models, the ones that are kind of the latest and greatest. So yeah, I think I'll kind of, stop it here. We got pretty far, I mean, like I said, there's maybe sort of half dozen or maybe 8 or 10 more changes that I'd want to make. I'm not sure if I'd be able to make them, but it's just getting into the sort of fine tuning really at this point. This is a serviceable chart. It's not a publishable chart. There are things that I would want to make, changes that I would want to make to before actually publishing this. And so, where does this all lead? Oh, by the way, okay, so my time I guess it was about 26 minutes when I sort of gave up. And so this probably would have taken something like, when I was doing this in Excel, it probably took more than that. I don't know exactly how long it took. I did this probably about a year ago, but I'm pretty sure it was more than 30 minutes because I had to group the data into bins. I had to use a pivot table, and there was a certain amount of work that needed to be done. But it's not like it wasn't vastly different. It wasn't like it took me 5 times longer to do it in AI or Excel. It's probably roughly comparable, I would say. And so, what have I learned just by doing this a number of times? Let me get the timer out of there. We don't need that anymore. About when it makes sense maybe to try using AI versus using a data visualization product like Excel or Tableau, or for example. And so I think it might be better to use AI if you obviously don't know how to use Excel or Tableau or Click or Power BI or whatever, right? Because these products have pretty steep learning curves. And so if you don't know how to use one, then AI could be really helpful. However, a couple of big caveats here. You still need to have general data visualization expertise, right? That prompt that I provided, and then the follow-up prompts to fine-tune and correct and finesse the chart, all relied on expertise that I have. And to be honest, if you don't know how to use any of those data visualization products, you probably don't have that expertise. But I don't know, maybe it could happen. And you have to double check the AI's work very carefully. I've seen, unfortunately, many times, just as with every other task, when AI creates charts, sometimes there are errors. In fact, unfortunately, fairly often. And they're subtle, right? Like if I had checked that heat map that it produced just to make sure that like all the values are actually correct, hopefully they would have been, but there's a chance that they wouldn't have. And so you have to you have to check things very carefully. Even if you are familiar with a product like Excel or Tableau or whatever, you still might want to try AI if there's a large number of steps required to create the chart you have in mind in your data visualization product of choice. I find that, like that's why I chose the heat map, right? There were many steps that I had to go through in Excel to create that. And in AI, it tends to be a little bit easier when there are many steps like that, or when you don't have when there's advanced data visualization product knowledge that you don't possess, right? You're looking at a chart, you have a chart in your head, and you're thinking, I don't think I know how to do this in Tableau or whatever. And so AI can be helpful there. Or the data visualization product that you're using doesn't have features that you need in order to create the chart that you have in mind. This is particularly true, unfortunately, of products like Power BI. And so in this case, maybe this would be, you could try AI and then maybe get it to write R code or something that would go into a Power BI dashboard. And I think that AI has these advantages in these situations because, basically AI uses code to create charts, right? You saw the code that it was generating. It was basically writing code that was calling a data visualization software library like ggplot or matplotlib or something like that. And when you're coding, this generally gives you more flexibility than if you're going through a GUI like in Excel or Tableau, for example. And AI tends to be good at figuring out the interim steps necessary to create more complex charts, right? And so I just told it, make bins and sort by median salary, for example. And so it figured out all the steps necessary to actually do that. And so there are obviously some advantages of using AI. It is kind of liberating, when I've been creating charts using AI, the fact that I just really don't have to think very much about how or if I'll be able to implement something that I'm imagining in whatever software product I'm using. If I can imagine it and describe it to an AI, it's a good chance that it's going to be able to pull it off. It can also create charts that go way beyond your skill limit in a particular data visualization product. For example, I can make my way around Tableau. I can do, I can kind of muddle about, but I'm no expert. And there are definitely things that I'd be able to do using AI that I would struggle to do in a product like Tableau, for example. And occasionally the AI actually comes up with good ideas, right? Where I'll give it a sort of a high level general prompt. And unfortunately, a lot of the time it's just not great and I just need to fix it. But sometimes it's little pearls where it's like, oh, actually, that's a good idea. I wouldn't have thought of doing it that way. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. There are some major caveats here. There are 3 or 4 kind of buts. Like the first one is, but you still need data visualization expertise. As you saw, I was using my expertise in formulating the original prompt and in figuring out like how to re-prompt it or follow up prompts in order to improve the chart. Because if you don't provide that high level, or not a high level, if you have that sort of expert guidance, then AI isn't really great at making design choices like choosing a chart type, figuring out what to highlight, what time span to show, etc. And so if you have a human user who has data visualization expertise, generally you're going to get much better results. And this is the case with many other things, even like medicine and law, for example. The charts that AI produces often have formatting problems, as you saw, just little things like, the labels are too close together, or they're too big or too small, or the scales are a little weird. And so, once again, you need somebody with data visualization expertise to notice these things and to know how to explain to the AI how to correct them. And this may or may not be fixable with follow-up prompts, right? Unfortunately, I have run into situations fairly often where I ask it to make a correction. Like, for example, in that heat map, I asked it to add more space between the columns, and it just didn't. And like I said, you need to check these charts with a fine-tooth comb because they do contain errors fairly often, and the errors tend to be subtle, right? They look fine, but then when you go through them with a fine-tooth comb, you see actually, whoops, there are issues. And so that has to be kind of accounted for, that time to really double-check the results. And as you saw, it can still take time, right? If we're talking about, well, is it faster to create a chart in a data visualization software product or using AI? Well, it's not instantaneous in AI, right? It takes time and thought to describe a well-designed chart, using full sentences. And chart rendering times, as you've seen, are much slower in AI than in a data visualization software product, right? If you make a change in Excel or Tableau, it's usually essentially instantaneous, like milliseconds. Whereas when you make changes in AI, it takes 10, 20, 30, 40, 60 seconds every time you want a new iteration. And so it can be actually a bit slow from that perspective. And of course, that verification can be time consuming depending on the chart. Simple chart is not going to take a lot of time. More complicated chart, like the distribution heat map that I was showing you, it might take some time to actually double check that. And you also might not get a usable result. As I mentioned, sometimes AI just kind of gets stuck, right? You ask it to do something, it doesn't do it, and you ask it again, and it doesn't do it, and you just can't get it to do everything that you want it to do. And for highly customized charts or unusual charts, the AI might be limited by features of the charting software library that it's using, right? Typically it uses something like matplotlib or ggplot2, and those libraries have their own limitations, and so you might run up against some limitations there. And as we just saw, it sometimes just taps out. It introduces some bug in its own code that it's using, or runs into some kind of, it looked like there was maybe some kind of file system handling error or something like that. And then, you basically don't have a usable result, and you spent a lot of time getting to something that you couldn't actually use. So it is a risk there. When it might be better to use data visualization software, well, it might be better to use a product like Excel or Tableau or Click or Power BI if you know the product well enough to create the chart that you have in mind, right? You're imagining it and you're thinking, yeah, I think I know how to do this in whatever software product I'm using. And also, if the chart can be created in relatively few steps in that software product, right? If you're thinking, there might be like 8 or 10 steps in creating this chart, which is not too many. And the product has the charting features that are required for the chart that you want to create, right? You know that you're not going to run up against feature limitations of the software that you're using. Or you need to have very precise control over the cosmetic formatting of the chart, because the chart is maybe going to be published in some kind of publication or on a big website or something like that. Because, we didn't quite get to that point in the demo, but I find very often when you're trying to make those very small fine-tuning adjustments, it can be quite difficult or impossible using AI, whereas in a GUI, you can just drag things around and make those fine-tuning adjustments typically a little more easily. What are the advantages of using data visualization software? Well, like I said, as long as there aren't too many steps, of course, clicking buttons and menu items is going to be a lot faster than describing what you want in full sentences. Again, depends on the number of steps required to create your chart. And as you saw, of course, the rendering times are way faster in a product like Excel or Tableau. They're basically instantaneous in most cases, unless you have a huge data set. Whereas in AI, the iterations take longer. And like I said, you typically have more control over the fine-tuning and small formatting adjustments in one of these software products. And the verification is usually a lot faster and a lot easier, right? And the chart is less likely to have kind of weird errors in it if you made it yourself in Excel or Tableau. It might, right? You should still check it, but usually it's a lot easier to spot issues and to fix them if you do spot those issues. What's the bottom line here? What are some key takeaways? Well, I think sometimes it is definitely faster to use AI, but sometimes it's faster to use a data visualization software product. It depends on a bunch of factors in terms of your knowledge of the software product you're using, how many steps are involved, if it's beyond the capabilities of the product or your abilities with the product. AI can enable users to create more complex or customized charts, but it might offer less control over those small formatting details. And to get high quality, accurate charts, you have to have data visualization expertise. Obviously, I have a horse in that race. That's what I teach people, but it's pretty clear to me that this is very true. Even if you're using AI, the AI is not going to replace that expertise. You only basically get results that are as good as your data visualization skills are. And in the future, I want to try sort of pre-prompting the AI with, for example, my books, right? So basically upload my books, say here, read all of these and use this information when I prompt you to create charts. And this could very well improve results, right? Indeed, it's I think fairly probable. I think you'll still need data visualization expertise, but its first attempt after the initial prompt might be better if it has this information. So if you do want to improve your data visualization expertise, happily, I have a live online public workshop coming up in June 2025. That might be soon, depending on when you watch this video. Registration is now open, and if you go to my website, practicalreporting.com, you can sign up for that and learn these data visualization essentials, which will help you regardless of what tool you're using, whether it's AI or a data visualization software product. Thanks very much for watching.